Boom, we are alive, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be dropping in, taking a look at Bitcoin. It looks like our test has completed. All of the 6-hour oscillators have reset. So we're just going to dive in and take a look at that. So here we are with Bitcoin. On our last video, I had mentioned we were looking for the stochastic RSI to totally reset and basically bite us into a test, which appears to have taken place. I meant to make a video yesterday, but my sleep schedule is just so fucked up. I woke up at like 2:30 in the morning, was awake till 6, and then fell asleep till like it's 3, and then now it's 6 p.m. here. Jeez. So I'm sorry, my schedule is super messed up. And for all of you in the private group, I'm going to start hitting us with weekly updates again. I'm sorry that it took me the last month to get it. As I mentioned in one of my previous videos, it's been a little bit, I had some personal difficulties I was going through, but I'm here now. So the oscillators have reset. It looks like the MACD is about to turn up to the upside as well. A lot of the selling has decreased. It's not the only asset that's doing that as well. Bitcoin here now appears to be in what a small reaccumulation range. Again, what I had mentioned is that on the 6-hour, there are two key points, the slow moving averages and the exponential moving averages. The exponentials were down at 61,000 and the slows were at around 63. So we were not able to break below the slow moving averages, and we've pumped up right already. Now, we could be watching a smaller reaccumulation pattern take place here on the 6-hour. So if we go in on the 1-hour, it starts to look a little bit clearer. That we are actually in a smaller trading range and likely appears to be reaccumulation in this smaller time frame as well. I do suspect that because of this, again, we are below the pi cycle top and bottom indicator. The MRV score is still low. Greed has dropped into fear. Actually, we're actually higher in price now, but lower in the greed index. This is actually quite a positive thing. Can't see it here, can we? Because my face is in the way. But let's see. And again, I think that what the market's going to try to do now is push into that $72,000 area to wipe out all of those shorts. Again, I'm not 100% convinced that this is reaccumulation and that there's going to be the larger move to the upside at the moment, but I think it feels very clear to me that we're going to the top of the trading range to try to wipe out that $72,000, $20 billion in shorts. So again, probably something like this before moving up to the $72,000 area. Whether we get reaccumulation and we have our SOS and backup phase here, I think we need to be a little bit more hesitant on, just because all of the market prices are still so high. But when we look into the other areas of the crypto market, the other, like, let's say altcoins, I think we're seeing reaccumulation here as well. So let's take a look at Solana. Solana here, broken out of its smaller reaccumulation, at least on the 15-minute, and moving to the upside. On the 6-hour, again, we had totally reset the oscillators, and this appears to have been what's a double bottom. So I think it's a guarantee we're going to move to the top of the range. So we've got probably, let's see here, around 20 to 30% in almost all the assets, even here with Bitcoin to the top of the trading range around that $72,000 area is around 15%. So even in the higher beta places like Solana, Fetch, and Avalanche, you got around 20 to 30% to the top of the trading range. Again, with Solana here, there's a few things that are quite interesting. But number one, I think it was that 15-minute reaccumulation pattern we were just looking at. This looks like clear reaccumulation to me. Again, I don't want to make a suggestion or a bid on the larger market as a whole, but this to me looks like we've had an SOS and a backup phase effectively for Solana already take place. I meant to get this video out yesterday, but either way, I think we're still a little bit early. For Avalanche here, we've already gone to the top of the range and back down, tested the EMAs. So across the board, we've tested the EMAs, total reset of the oscillators here as well for the stochastic RSI. And then again, same thing here with Near. We have totally reset the oscillators and are about to start moving up. So for Near here, we're stuck right between the slow moving averages and what appears to be building and in the middle of the box reaccumulation range. So again, I think the upside move is at the very least to the top of the previous trading range for many of these assets. It's again, we can make a good argument that we've already witnessed the spring and the test. So movement to the upside, I think here is most likely. I've said this a few times that the bullish trend is what got us here, and that hasn't been destroyed yet. But just to be protective, especially in the alternative assets. But the next few steps are going to be pretty important because they're going to tell us whether or not we continue into new or brand new all-time highs for many of these assets. So I had looked at gold previously. We've broken above the top of the range, moved back. So I suspect we're going to see the backup and SOS phase here now start to complete for gold. Same with silver. It looks like we're completing the backup phase after a multi-year reaccumulation channel. These are very bullish indicators for our sector as well, because it shows that the larger market's indication is towards the weakness of the dollar and the strength of assets. I think that this trend is basically only going to continue. There's no reason to be bullish on the dollar. They're going to continue to print it. They're going to continue then to inflate it, which will then increase the asset prices across the board. The only thing that I think is going to be left out in that, again, is housing. I have a very strong conviction that due to excess deaths, that housing is going to basically collapse, because it's unimportant. It's not used, it's not super functional land. Even much business real estate will probably do quite poorly here. Much of these companies have moved online or offshore, realizing that you can hire someone who's just as talented from a different country for 50% cheaper. Many companies are starting to take advantage of that in the long term. So the fact that silver and gold are in what appear to be their SOS and backup phases, I think, is a strong indicator that we can just assume that we are going to be going to new all-time highs, even though the market hasn't given us that direction yet. The fact that we have these other assets leading us in that direction, I think, is a strong indicator. The S&P 500, again, is testing some of its lower bounds of that range at the moment, although in the previous trading ranges here, we had blown up. So I suspect that we're going to see a volatile trading range take place right here. I had mentioned that a while back, that once we started to get around the 570 mark, that we would start to see more volatility in the S&P 500. Also what we're seeing. But if we add the oscillators back in here, we've totally reset the stochastic RSI. We're on our way to reset the RSI itself. The MACD is crossed over and turned down, but remember, we've been in basically a straight up move since April for the S&P 500 at 12%, which is massive. I think this is going to continue. I think this is a market melt-up scenario. There's a lot of people who are calling for the crash of the stock market, but that makes no sense. Stocks are more valuable than dollars. I know that sounds confusing, but assets are more valuable than dollars. When your government can just print dollars, there's no real value to them. They're like a hot potato. Anyone that knows what they're doing is going to be trying to trade dollars for assets as quickly as possible in the coming years due to this inflation is continually going to take place. Now, most of the time they measure that inflation through the consumer price index, which makes very little sense. Inflation is in all assets. It's just not the average person who notices it. But when your house is up 2 times higher than it was a few years ago, it's because of the inflation of the dollar and literally nothing else. Your house is not more valuable. The currency is just less valuable, which leads us to our next and final idea here, where we're going to take a look at the dollar. I suspect continued weakness here in the dollar. We've been watching this trading range here for quite some time. It doesn't look bullish to me. It looks like we're turning potentially bearish, although there is the potential for some strength on the slow moving averages here to try to build something up. But again, I suspect we're going to break down. I think we're going to see a return all the way back to the bottom of this long-term rising channel here for the dollar. It just seems to be the most sensible. Once we do that, it'll be a real test of the dollar. You can see we've got multiple months and almost a decade of data here of this rising channel and starting to show weakness in it as well. On the weekly, the oscillators are oversold, but we haven't reset the RSI in any of this range whatsoever. So I suspect a full reset of the RSI within this range is going to be likely. Technically, we've already had our SOS backup phases and our SOS phase here, so I wouldn't be too bullish on the dollar. Assets here make more sense. They're more valuable than paper, and I think a lot of people are going to start to recognize that the US dollar is basically like a hot potato. You don't want to hold on to it for too long. Currency in general kind of has that sentiment. It's designed to be used. They're looking for velocity in the system, and one of the ways they're going to do that is by adding printing and reducing rates in the coming months. I don't think the governments have any other choice, and around the world, I've been here in Dubai, I've been talking to people about all the countries that they come from, the way their government deals with currencies and dollars, and I am getting very similar feedback through all of these as well. So at the moment, everything looks good. We had a total reset of the oscillators for Bitcoin on the 6 hour. Didn't go as low as I thought we might go, but it's not the test might not be over. We might still see another like reaccumulation range that does this. And this is usually the best, one of my favorite spots. It's after the test, not trying to catch a falling knife, but looking for that middle of the box reaccumulation range. We are right at the point of control for the VPVR, and we're right at the slow moving averages in the bottom. The EMAs are going to start to come up here too. So it's very likely, again, that we move to $72,000, and then from there I would be adjusting risk. And that's going to look different in all the assets, but again, I think the more we kind of look at all of them, we're going to get a clearer image of what's going on. So again, for things like Fetch, there's still 20 to 30% move to the upside here, and that's about what they all have. So there's a high likelihood, again, after the test of the EMA bands, both of Near, Avalanche, Solana, all have done the same thing, totally reset the oscillators. And it looks likely that we're going to be moving to the top of the trading range for a 20 to 30% move in pretty much all of these. So good times. Hope that's helpful. Again, to all the Private Bear family members out there, I'm sorry that the email updates haven't been consistent. I put out a video about a month ago talking about I'm struggling, just having some personal moves. It's a total side point, but this is the first I've ever been depressed. I go through, I feel good, and then I go through waves of it. I just feel like garbage. I've never felt that before. Never really in my whole life. Often if I felt bad when I was younger, it was motivating. It's the first time it hasn't. So thank you all for your kind words, your support, and sticking with me through the difficult times. Those of you that have, I've got an email update that I'm going to be working on. It'll be coming out Monday, and then I'm going to fire them out once a week, every week, with no delay. So I apologize for that. It's my fault. I'm the only one here working, basically. So if I start to up, it's all my fault. Yeah, so there's no one else to be accountable other than myself. So for that, I'm sorry. And for those of you that have stuck around throughout all these years and supported me, I'm really grateful. And thank you for being patient with me throughout this process. That FTX hit was one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through. And trying to recover has just not had the normal strength and vigor that I have in my character that I had when I was younger. So yeah, just thank you for being patient and going through this journey with me. Steve with the Arcane Bear. I'm signing off for the rest of the day. Maybe I'm going to try producing a few more videos here too as well. Just because, again, and we'll see what happens there. So thank you all. Catch you on the next episode.